Welcome to the Depths of Motherhood podcast. I'm your host, Danielle. In season 8, we're exploring what it means to reweave the village, to return to connection after generations of being told we have to do it alone. And truthfully, I'm still finding my way too. Like many of us, I'm saying yes to a new way, learning to notice my old patterns of survival and finding my way back to a life that aligns with the heart. I hope that each episode feels like you're sitting around the fire with a group of friends in raw, honest conversations. I'd love for you to get involved in this season, so please write below in the chat or come to join us on our social media page. And if you go to the show notes, you're going to find my newly released book, Reclaiming Circle, a guide to holding women's circles. Thank you so much for being here, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what comes through in this season. Welcome back, everybody. We are here for episode 3 in season 8, Reweaving the Village. It's been a few weeks since I last shared a recording because it has been the winter time, going through Christmas and the New Year and the festive season. And actually, I do not celebrate the way that I used to, but still, it's been kind of fast pace. And I've had one of my most beautiful friends come to stay with me for 2 weeks, and it has just flown by. And I also have been nursing a sore throat, and I think it comes from chatting a lot, sharing stories, unraveling things, and it has been completely nourishing and absolutely necessary. And now she's just left, and I am kind of integrating the whole experience and like nursing my heart, because having her here was just such a special gift. And it also helped me to realize more and more what it means to be in relationships where there is that nourishment, where there is that reciprocity, compared to where there is a feeling of performing. And I know that relationships have their seasons, and when we first meet people, we are maybe playing certain roles out or showing a certain side of ourselves. And this is also completely normal. But when we find these relationships where we can just sink in, emerge, and allow ourselves to be seen and to be held, and there's that trust that this person really gets us, that even if we say something that doesn't quite match what we're feeling, or we're speaking from a wound, and maybe we say things that don't feel so kind or so soft, that other person knows us. And so we don't have to explain ourselves. We don't have to go over it, because there is that deep knowing well beyond words. So I'm very grateful for that moment, that experience that I've just had. And in these relationships, I really cherish them, and I treat them with so much love, respect, and reverence, because I know that these kind of relationships and friendships, they don't always come by so often. And with this season, Reweaving the Village, I feel like this is such an important topic of who we're letting into our space, who we're choosing to merge with, and not trying to rush the village or to make it about numbers, but to make it more about quality relationships and challenging that vision that we have. Because the vision is there. Maybe you see a number of people, maybe it looks a certain way, but really this feeling in this present moment in the relationships that we're in is going to help us to reweave and to come back together in a way that is true and that is authentic. So today we're going to be talking about our nervous system. And I hope my voice is coming through okay. It's probably super low and croaky, but this is what we have today. I'm feeling inspired to record. I've been with my daughter all day, and I decided I'm going to take a pause while she's with her dad and just sit and see what comes through. Because it's been very alive for me, especially with my friend here, just kind of seeing that one of the most important things that we're choosing to focus on, this came through for me and my friend, was the power of choosing ourselves and knowing that when we choose ourselves, it's not to self isolate and disconnect. It's a knowing that these boundaries that we have in relationships, they're porous. So as we care for ourselves, this also moves through this porous membrane and it reaches them as well. And we also begin to role model the self care in the sense of self care being noticing moment to moment how we're doing. What is it that we need? Are we distracting? Can we take a moment to pause, to feel ourselves? And it's like calling our energy home again and again. So this episode, I I didn't know where I was going to go with this until I started to hear my own body. So my body started speaking to me. I don't know if I mentioned this in the last episode, but I got this shoulder pain. And I've been carrying my daughter around with me a lot. We're living in the mountains right now, and I want to get out and about. And so I'm carrying her, and she's 4.5 years old. And my shoulder started to feel really uncomfortable to the point that I couldn't move my neck or my shoulder. And so I asked myself, where am I carrying too much? And the obvious one was my daughter, because she's 4.5. And then I started to pose this question to other areas in my life. And it really made me question home equity and like finding balance in the home and the way that we're living. So we don't have any family around us. And so from this calling back from my body, which is amazing, my body is incredible. I was able to, come back to this exploration of caring for myself. So in this noticing, I started to begin to really listen, and it's really infused into this episode today because I kept finding myself tense without knowing. Like my shoulders lifted, my jaw held, my breath not as deep as it would usually be. And what stuck with me wasn't the tension itself, but how completely normal this hold in the body had become. And not in like a dramatic or an alarming way. It was just familiar. I hadn't paused enough to listen and to notice. And it was if I was being slightly braced for what was to come. And so this has all been a huge revealing to me because I've been here with my body before. I've, after when I went on my, I want to say spiritual journey, I dove into somatics, into yoga, into breath work. And then becoming a mother, I noticed that I didn't have the time. I didn't have the space. And when I was tired, I just was collapsing. So I've slowly started to bring movement in during my time whenever I was born. But it became very, um, like it was like a system. I would wake up in the morning, I would do the same routine. And a lot of the time it was without really feeling. And then once I'd done it, I would, okay, tick, I've done that and go on with my day. And so more and more, my body's been calling me back over the years just to take moment to moment. And I thought, I was doing it until this wake up call recently where I noticed jaw and shoulders and neck. And so it's not a surprise that right now I'm nursing this sore throat because I think with my friend being here, a lot has come up, a lot has been released. And this is kind of the opening and the release of some of the tension and what was held there as well. So just remembering that in our body, that when we do come back and we do release and we do open, it's not always just the emotions and the thoughts and the insights, but physical releases that can have symptoms as well. So be gentle as we unravel. And sometimes it's tricky because, with all these beautiful insights I've had, I kind of wanted to put some things in place. Like I was feeling very inspired. And then yeah, the symptoms and how it made my body feel just brought me back down. It's like pause, let it integrate, let it come, and trust that things are going to start to come into place with this new embodied wisdom. And so I feel like as well, this link to the village and community had been held very much in my throat, in my shoulders, in my neck, and my diaphragm. And I felt like I was searching, I was looking, I was trying to fix all of this. And my partner is here as well. But when I looked at this, I was trying to do it as if I was the only one who could, or that I was the only one I trusted in. And so I fell into calling my energy home, tapping into my heart frequency and what it means to nourish myself, to love myself, to be present and being in that energy as I'm caring for my daughter, as I'm caring for my home, as I'm nourishing my family, and allowing myself to radiate with this frequency and trusting that what is meant for us in regards to the village, to community, to home, that it will come to us. And maybe it is my partner who's meant to receive the insight and the guidance and to kind of put more pieces together in this physical realm. And as I fell into this, my body started to soften. And I was like, yes. And then I started to notice where I wanted to search, where I wanted to bring the same old patterns in. And I said, no, I created my boundaries with this. And some very beautiful things are happening with me and my partner where he's having these insights. He's having this curiosity that wasn't there in the same way before. So I wanted to share that with you because right now this is very much alive inside of me and I'm trying to put words to it. But it's more of a feeling. It's definitely a deep, deep feeling with this. So this episode is not about trying to fix ourselves or this present moment. And it's not about regulating our nervous system because it's more about observing what is our body telling us and how can we listen? How can we bring safety, a sense of safety to our body, which means it feels soft enough to share. And so just as we're listening, just notice, well, as you're listening, just notice how your body responds to this. There might be resistance, there might be softness, and you can pause this at any time if anything comes through. So slowing down enough to notice what our bodies are communicating to us and remembering the language that our body uses to communicate and finding ways that we can help our body to feel that it trusts us again, trusts us enough to listen, right? So we'll just pause for a moment, just to take a breath, to welcome in this conversation much more deeply. And if at any time through this chat that we're having, you need to move, you need to get water, you need to pause, let's start to bring this in. Let's start to bring this practice of listening to our body. Let's bring it to life. So when I speak about the nervous system here, I'm not talking about medically or clinically. I'm not talking about diagnoses or diagrams. I'm talking about the part of you that responds before you think. The part that decides whether you can soften or whether you need to stay alert. The part that tightens, that pulls away, rushes, freezes, or tries to keep the peace before the language arrives. So as we make space, we start to notice how our body is responding, and then we get to choose. So these signals from the body are kind of like little calls to say, hey, something's happening, there's a perceived threat, and we can slow down. Sometimes the threat is very much real, and we respond accordingly. What I'm talking about here is these perceived threats based on unconscious beliefs based on the stories that we have held inside our body. So maybe things are coming alive for you right now. Maybe something's happened today or this week where you notice there's that reaction before thinking. And this is so normal as human beings. And as we become more conscious, we can make more space. So our nervous system is shaped by our inherited beliefs. It is shaped by our past. So I said in the previous episode, this idea of staying present is beautiful, but our present is our past. It is our future, because that's just how we operate as human beings. Yet we can become more present to what is happening through awakening our senses, which makes the outside world feed a message to us with more clarity. And then we get more space to see if this threat is true or it's a perceived threat. And so through most of human existence, this knowing that our body is responding to our environment, to our subconscious beliefs, to our past, to all of that, it wasn't new knowledge. Ancient cultures understand this through lived practice. You can see it in yoga, where breath and movement are used to signal safety to the body. We can see it in Japanese practices like forest bathing, where slowness and presence with nature helps to restore this balance. We can see it in many indigenous cultures across the world, where rhythm, song, shared meals, time on the land, and communal care were not just spiritual add-ons, but daily nervous system support. They were there to help us remember that we are safe, that together with the land, with one another, with rhythms, we can find this balance in our body again. We can find this safety. And so science is now giving us language for this. And many people, sometimes just taking the practices on is not enough. So the language that science brings, the evidence that science brings, can help our logical mind. And I'm sure you can agree, we're living in a world now that is very mental. So it's not that the body needs the science to heal. It's because the mind can become a barrier. So understanding how the body works can sometimes help the mind to rest, can help the mind to step aside long enough for the body to be felt and to receive these tools that can help us come back into balance. And when we think about it, our bodies are responding to far more than we consciously notice. There's so much that is filtered out. Our bodies respond to noise levels, even when we think we've tuned them out. They respond to artificial light. They respond to urgency and interruption. They respond to pollution in the air. They respond to tension in the room, to being watched or being judged, to these unspoken dynamics that are always happening around us. The nervous system is always scanning, always taking information, always asking a very simple question underneath everything else. Am I safe enough to be here? So when we feel restless, overwhelmed, shut down, braced up, it isn't always because there's something wrong or because we're failing in any way. Many times it's because the body has been responding very faithfully to something in the environment that has been perceived as a threat. And our bodies learn what the world is like by paying attention to patterns. If distress is met constantly, the body learns that it can feel and recover. If rest is allowed without consequence, the body learns that it can stand down. If connection feels safe, the body learns that it can open. So the patterns that we meet with safety, the patterns that we meet with feeling unsafe, these are the things that our body is picking up on. So when these conditions of sense safety are not present, the body adapts. It learns to stay alert, to scan, to brace, to contract, to shut down or to disappear, to connect with people, but through a sense of fear. And the word that used to be used in this fight, flight, freeze, the final one was fawn. But actually, to shift this to appease, to make someone, well, hopefully make someone feel happy so that they're not a threat anymore. So these are all the things that we can be looking at. And so we can start to notice in our daily life, firstly, the body, if it's contracted, and notice the response as well. So this isn't dysfunction in our body. It is learning. It's an intelligence shaped by what is needed to survive in this moment because of what we believe deep down, because of patterns that we've seen, because of things that we've learned. And so once the body learns something this way, it doesn't simply forget because the circumstances change. It continues with patterns that it knows has worked in the past. And these patterns may not be nourishing. They may be completely depleting and putting ourselves last. But what it means, is our body believes, is that it's actually a way to help us to survive. So when we start to become aware of these patterns and we make space and we notice what we do when there's a perceived threat, what patterns we take, which will be different in every circumstance, we can pause and we can reflect and we can ask, is this threat true or is it perceived? And you can see the way the body moves to react to this in order to survive. And when we look at collective history in the body, this is where we can see how the past enters our nervous system. So colonization didn't just rearrange the land and the laws or the language. It altered what safety felt like in the body. Community protection was replaced with surveillance and control. Shared care was replaced with punishment. Enoughness was replaced with scarcity. And predictability was replaced with threat. Our bodies learned that visibility could be dangerous, that gathering could be punished, that rest could be unsafe, and that trusting the wrong person could cost everything. And so the nervous system adapted. Hypervigilance became a form of intelligence. Emotional containment became protection. Disconnection became a way to endure what could not be changed. And these were not conscious choices. They were learned responses, repeated over time. It proved to our body that it worked. We stayed alive. And what is learned through repetition becomes pattern. And those patterns do not disappear simply because generations pass. So before this kind of disruption, regulation was rarely an individual task. So finding peace in our body, soothing ourselves was part of was tended to by the people around us and the nature. People settled together, they ate together, they sang together, they worked and they rested in shared rhythm. They grieved and they celebrated alongside one another. Song, drums, shared meals, shared movement were not cultural decoration. They were nervous system supports, ways of synchronizing breath, heart rate, and attention so the bodies could feel held by something much larger than themselves. And when these practices were disrupted or forbidden or punished, people were left to regulate alone, often under ongoing pressure, with people around them telling them what they needed after they'd been stripped of their traditions, separated from their people. So, seen in this way, much of what we now call anxiety, overwhelm, numbness, shutdown begins to make sense as nervous systems respond to the absence of co-regulation. So once again, we can see that this is not a personal failure. I feel like I want to say this again because it means so much that this is not a personal failure. So many of us are carrying this burden like we're doing something wrong. Like we are failing as individuals. So when you take a step back and you see the present moment, you see the past, you see the patterns, you can take that deep breath and say, wow, I'm literally just responding to what has been happening through generations. And this is very empowering because now we get to choose. And of course, as we mentioned before, there can be the grief that comes with that. And as we know, grief and death is not uh, very well held in our society. And we can bring it back. We can reclaim our grief. And when we do that, when we can hold our grief, we can also hold hope. And we can also choose what happens in our lives. We can see that we don't need all these things that are outside of us to diagnose us or to save us. We can first begin to notice and we can come home. We can call our energy home and we can start to feel. And we do this with grace and with gentleness. Because as I mentioned before, when we open up, a lot can come up. So there's no surprise that the history that we've been taught has been through the ones who are holding the pen, has been written by the people who are upholding a certain narrative. And this is why women's circles are so powerful. This is why listening to her story is so powerful. Because then, even if we don't have the story written, we can feel it inside of us. And that feeling, we get these downloads, these insights. And these are supposed to be for us, but also for our community as well. So these patterns, as I mentioned, they don't stop with one generation. Children don't learn whether the world is safe through explanation. They learn it through their bodies, through how tense or relaxed the adults around them are. And as I think we spoke about on the first episode, through the time in the womb, through epigenetics, through how emotions are welcomed or avoided, through whether rest is allowed without guilt. Stress patterns can become familiar, and then familiar becomes normal. And I just mentioned epigenetics, so I'll go into a little bit more, because what science now calls epigenetics gives language to all of this, what we've been talking about, without turning it into destiny. So the body responds to its environment, chronic stress, fear, and scarcity, shaping our physiology. Hormones shift, immune systems change, nervous systems organize around survival. And these adaptations can be passed down not as stories, but as baseline responses, because it's about survival. We want, without even knowing it logically, we want our children to survive this world. And our bodies are braced for this world and the perceived threat. So we got to get really clear on what is happening. And that's why it's beautiful as well to call in this ancestral healing and connection and integration, letting it be part of our lives. To remember that the ones that went before us, they had their experiences, they had their desires, they had their trauma, they had their beliefs. And when we can see what happened to them, we can see maybe where we're taking it on. In my book, Reclaiming Circle, there's a really big part of that in chapter 2 of really digging into our past. And sometimes it's hard. Maybe it's not available at all. Maybe it's distorted. But what we do is we tune into our past, our ancestors. It lives within us. So we can see what messages want to come through. We can feel what is ours and what is not ours. And we can give reverence for that, and we can notice it. And it's not about, having a very clear story of our past, because it's impossible. But it is about feeling and allowing it in and knowing that that is part of us. And it is going to be part of our present moment, and it will feed into the future. So, I'll leave the link in my book in the show notes, because that was a really important part in chapter 2, was to, before holding circle, knowing what is unconsciously moving us. And I found this very, very important for being able to step more deeply into myself, into motherhood, and for holding space. And I mentioned before about our nervous system being shaped by all of the things that we're talking about. So let's talk about the vagal pathway. Maybe you've heard about this. It was quite big, like the last few years, the polyvagal theory. So this is one of the main pathways through which this learning happens. It's called our vagal nerve. And it runs from the brainstem through the throat, the heart, the lungs, the gut, into the womb. And it's constantly carrying information about whether it's safe enough to connect, to rest, to digest, whether the body needs to get ready, whether it needs to fight, to run away, or to shut down. And so the vagal nerve, which is also known as the wandering nerve, it translates to, is always listening. And it actually is unique for each person. So each person's vagal nerve will look different depending on all the things that we've just been speaking about. So our body, as we mentioned, is constantly learning and receiving information to say whether it's safe or not. And so there is no correct nervous system. It's not about trying to change it. or even trying to regulate it. It's just about starting to listen and starting to feed in new patterns, starting to clear out the senses so that we can receive clearly what's happening from the outside, to notice and to tend to these deeply rooted beliefs about what's safe and what isn't safe. So this is the nervous system that we have, and it's shaped by past and the lives that we've lived. And we can tend to it. We can nourish it. So when the body perceives the threat, it awakens. It responds automatically. And fight can show up as irritation or anger or tension in the hands and the arms, the jaw, the legs. Think it's where the energy goes when it's brought to our attention that we need to fight. And so if you don't first notice the body, where the energy is flowing, it might be in your words or how you throw something or you hit something or you notice your body just gets really irritated. With flight, the energy can move again to the legs, to run away, to the lungs, to breathe deep, to pull in this energy as we move as far away from the situation as possible. If you don't notice in your body, you might notice it as just thinking, I want to move away. I need to get away from this. Feeling restless, overthinking, trying to escape the situation. It's constant flow, like moving. If it comes through as freeze, you can feel this heaviness, numbness, disconnect. Maybe you might say, oh, I'm feeling really heavy. I'm feeling depressed. I don't want to be here. What's my purpose? Freeze is pretending that you're dead. And this is what animals would do. I'm playing dead. So you might notice that come through. And then appease, which was formerly known as fawn, appease is often looking like people pleasing, abandoning our own needs to keep the peace. So noticing where that goes, noticing what words come through, how you give yourself, overly give yourself to appease others. And these responses make sense when seen as adaptations. Different states need different kinds of care. So fight often needs movement or strength before it allows to press through. So imagine it's a perceived threat, and we've all had these moments. I can think of one today where the reaction doesn't meet what's actually happening. And so, but there is something that's being triggered that's very, very real. This energy inside is very, very real. And so the more we get to know ourselves, the more it'll make sense why we're responding that way. But let's just say we're right now tending to the energy that's moving through. Something's happening. Energy is moving through the hands, and you could label it as fight. You want to fight. You want to protect yourself, whether it's through movements, through words. And so if you notice it, you can pause, and that fight energy is not needed for survival. What you can do is to allow it to move through you with movement, with squeezing, with clenching, with dancing, jogging on the spot, screaming, deep breath, ah. And this is for your experience, not to put out on somebody else, for you to allow it to move through and to pause and then to feel. So with each of these, I'm going to give you some ideas. And then afterwards, it's always that pause. So if it's flight, if you're feeling yourself wanting to move away, wanting to change your situation, wanting to escape, go for a walk. Maybe make some actual space. Give yourself permission to move, literally to move away, to take a breath, but with the intention to come back. But just honor that need to move. And if you can't move, you can't go anywhere, maybe in your house taking care of children or something, or you're at work, then just move. Use your breath. Go and find some space just to let yourself move. Let that energy move through you. If it's freeze, then we can welcome some warmth. We can welcome some connection to nature, to allow the senses to stay open, to remember that you're in a safe space. You start to come out of your box that you created, playing dead. Start to interact with the world, a nice warm tea, something you enjoy, something that brings you, you're just like, yes, come to that. It's very small signals that the world outside is safe, that you can come back to life. And then with appease, Slow down. Notice where you're overextending. Notice where you're pushing your own boundaries just to make other people feel happy. Notice what you say. Notice what your fears come up. So these are very simple ways. You will find your own way as you connect to this. But after tending to what's initially there, what energy is initially there, make time to just lay or just to pause and just to feel how the energy shifts and give yourself an affirmation. Might be something like, I am safe. I trust my body. I am listening, whatever it is. Because this isn't about forcing the calm and to forcing it to move and change. It's about letting the energy pass through. So there's space then to listen to what is really there. And you can ask, what is really happening here? What did I perceive as a threat? And listen. And this is so deep. So I'm just giving some basic tips here. And it's not that this work has to be done alone at all. It's very important that we know how to be with this energy before we project it and push it out and hope someone saves us. So the basic understanding is really, really important. But actually, as we know, co-regulation is a real thing, and our nervous systems are soothed when being around people that we trust and we feel safe with. It doesn't just have to be people, it can be animals, it can be nature. Anything where there is a living being, a sentient being in our presence. The trees, you can be with them. They don't rush us. They'll stand, they'll anchor, they'll breathe with us. The water doesn't interrupt. It can allow for the energies to pass through, for us to find that peace in ourselves. The earth, you can place your hands on the earth and speak. We won't have to over explain. We can just share. We can just let it move through us. So these things are not extras. They are ancient practices that help us to find peace in our body in these moments. And so there's no surprise with knowing this, with knowing how tearing humans away from one another, from the land, from our own heart, how important all these things are. And so it can be sold back to us. So it's worth naming that the global health and well-being industry is now worth trillions. And it is one of the fastest growing industries every year. It's expanding, and it's often pointing us towards solutions outside of ourselves, ways to fix, more tools, more techniques, more self-responsibility, and they're often practiced alone. And all these things that I'm sharing today, through one lens, it could be, oh, doing this all alone, self-isolation, dealing with this. But no, it's more, it's so much deeper than this. It is self-responsibility, but in a way that is curious, that is open to listen, and that is knowing that when we turn our awareness inside and we are held by our loving awareness, just curious and knowing all these things, we stay open, we don't close off. When we close off our heart, when we build up the walls, when we separate because there's a fear, it's so much different than tending to ourselves because we have the intention to reconnect back to the earth, back to ourselves, back to one another. Wow, I got a little passionate there. I might need to take a drink. So when we listen to our body, when we call our energy home, we realize that there's no product that can replace that. That presence is not something that we can buy. And choosing ourselves is not self-isolation. And yes, there are tools and practices that can support us, and they will take us so far, and they'll take us to the point where we're knocking on our door and we're saying, hey, I'm here. And we say, welcome home. And then we can let go of the tools. We can let go of the things. And this is where there is the challenge I see, because we can get addicted to the tools, the practices of giving our money away. a fear that if we don't do it, we won't be able to return home. But you know when you're home. You know when you've come back. I'm getting goosebumps now thinking about it. Actually, I think I'm going to cry. You know that moment. You know what it's like. And that you've come back. You've done it once. You can do it again. You can let go of these things. It's like the story. Oh, I'm going to totally get this wrong now. I've spontaneously brought a story in. Okay. Some say Buddha said this, the story of a group of guys. I think I even said it in my first episode, but it always sticks with me. So they're taking the boat over the river and they get to the village where they need to be. And someone says to them, hey, why don't you put down the boat? And because they're about to climb up this mountain. And the people who have just been in the boat say, well, this boat got us here. We're going to have to take it with us. So there's the message. The boat can take you over the river, but you don't need to take it up the mountain with you. Okay, I hope I said that right. So, yeah, so I think I'll leave it there with talking about this industry. One thing that is completely free and accessible and simple to remember. Notice when your body contracts, pause and listen, just doing that as your practice. You might have nothing else coming from it. Your body might not respond, but it's a pattern started. Okay, I feel tension, something is being communicated. So let that contraction become noticeable instead of being familiar where it becomes white noise. Because a lot of the time we're holding stuff in the body unconsciously, and it's not until we stop that we feel. And so this imbalance or these imbalancing in the body, the contractions, which let's just say the imbalance is the body is perceiving that there's a threat. So this becomes a signal instead of a baseline. The body says, listen, and we say, yes, I'm here. I'm listening. And so let's just bring it back to ourselves as mothers. I know some people listening to this are not mothering little human beings. They're mothering something, you're mothering something. So many mothers are holding this. Many women are holding this. Holding this need to, not need, the vision. So yes, the need. The vision that this is not healthy for humans, the society that we're living in. It's not in the best interest for humans, for our human nature, for our innate nature. There's so much pulling us away from that. There's knowing that we were never meant to hold this alone. And so the children, the homes, the emotional labor, the community, the income, the presence, holding all of this, trying to make sense of it. That is a lot. So let's bring compassion in for ourselves. If your nervous system feels tired, withdrawn, or stretched, there is nothing wrong with you. A lot of the time, we just know, we're just very aware that it's not correct. And it seems like no one around us is doing anything about it. So going back to what I said in the beginning, you don't have to fix it all. There might be some things that are like tangible that you can do. But if you know something's up, you don't know where to go with it, but you just know. Call into the heart frequency, get yourself in there, call your energy home, care for yourself when you have these moments, and trust the people around you as well are also part of this weaving and co-creation. You don't have to do it all alone. It will come. So this is the trust. It's not passive, because self-care and calling our energy home after it's so used to being connected to things outside of us, it's not the easiest thing. So know that you are doing the work. If the mind's like, oh, I'm not doing anything, you're doing it. You're like, it's huge. So, what else did I want to go with this? When we remember this for ourselves, we remember it for others as well, because overwhelm can be invisible. And we have these patterns when we want to withdraw that, maybe the rest of the world don't even know. They don't even know you're withdrawing. So connection with one another when we're supporting our friends or other mothers, people in our lives, just remember, just because they don't look overwhelmed, just because They don't look withdrawn because they look like they got everything together. Maybe they don't, and maybe they do. But this connection between one another requires steadiness and gentleness and compassion. And over time, we'll figure out what's happening in their lives because maybe they don't know. Just like for ourselves, sometimes we don't really know what's happening, but something's up and maybe we don't have words for it right now. So, no need to force anything, just this slow coming back to the heart and this trust. Because as we step back to ourselves, we're also returning. And it seems very like paradoxical, not a word. Seems like a paradox because it's like by returning to myself, am I really returning to community? But it's the intention because maybe a lot of the time you withdrawn out of fear or stress or overwhelm, but no, this is a return by choice to replenish, to recharge, and to allow the vision, the future, the new way, the way that is serving of humans and all living beings in general. It is coming. And so it becomes this dance. So we are human beings responding to our environment. We are not problems to be fixed. And sometimes, a lot of the time, what the nervous system needs is space, not more to do, not more things to solve, but space to breathe, to remember. And in that space, when the nervous system breathes and it finds softness, it remembers that it's safe. Wisdom comes through. So we don't know what that is yet because it's not from the mind. It comes as a gift when we pause. Space to breathe, space to remember what matters, space to stay orientated to what we are tending to in the season. That is my word of this year, reorientate. I'm reorientating back to my heart. And I really feel a thing that's really helping me is rituals, small, simple moments in my day. Don't need to be elaborate. Don't need to buy anything. Just ways that we pause in the day to make a tea, to step outside, to pause before we sleep, to take a deep breath and feel our heart, feel our connection to our family, to our children, to this earth. So that rhythm that we bring to our day, it also brings this rhythm inside of us and around us, and we start to notice it as well. So a little gentle practice through your days. Just begin to notice what softens you. Write a list. Because when we're in the height of it, it's sometimes tricky to pull in some things to help us, come back, bring ourselves back to presence, to our heart. So it might be being around water. You might even like the sound of running water. You might put the tap on. You might be able to take a shower. You might be able to go near some moving water. It might be the animals, the sound of the birds, or maybe you have a pet. It might be slow movement, slow breaths. It might be making something or drawing. Maybe it's calling someone or sharing something with somebody who doesn't make you rush, doesn't need to solve anything, someone who just sees you and loves you. And you say, I've just got this to share with you right now. I just want to be seen and I just want to be heard. So we start to ask and call in what we need. Because your body already knows, these are just practices to come back. And from there, we start to build more trust for ourselves. And I really feel as well, one of the things that helps me so much is remembering how powerful our heart is when we drop our awareness into our heart, when we breathe into our heart space, when we open the chest, rotate the shoulders, rotate the everything around that space. I don't know how much we can rotate, but just bringing this gentle rhythm into the body. Because a lot of the time for me, I can crunch up, my jaw can clench, my head leans forward, and I'm like bracing. I don't realize. And I don't even look like I am until I pull back my head and I gently move and I gently breathe. And that for me is like wonderful. It really helps me. So now we're going to come to close. I also, as I'm here, I'm going to invite you to something that me and my sister are doing. So every full moon, we just held the last circle for the wolf moon. and the recording will be available. I put it under here actually. So it is a ceremony to honor the full moon's energy. And this was a wolf moon and just really connected to our instinct, to our sense of belonging, to not performing. And it was very, very beautiful. So I'll leave the link there because there's a 90-minute recording available. And if you want to join the next circle, which will be in February, at the start of February, then we have some spaces open. So it's a very small group that we have, but then the recording's there. So just something that you might want to look forward to. All right, let's take a deep breath and let this exhale, the next exhale, lengthen slightly, a little bit longer than usual. And ask yourself, what are you tending to right now? And let the answer live in your body rather than in your mind. Feel the energy. Where does it move to? What are you tending to? And this beautiful, beautiful remembrance that you're not broken. Your nervous system is not broken. It was just shaped to help you to survive. It learned what it needed to. And slowly, through awareness, through rhythm, through nature and relationship, it can learn something else. Not all at once. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it is this relationship. It is this connection. It is this tending to. So take some time after this to be with your body and see what comes through. If you're someone who writes, if you're someone who draws or moves or cooks or prepares, let yourself do that so that this exploration can become integrated and your own wisdom can come through. Thank you so much for being here. This has been so beautiful for me to share. I can feel my body relaxed and open and curious. And everything, as we integrate, as the wisdom comes through, it might come through very clear. It might come through in drips and drabs. It might come through in a dream or a synchronicity. It might come through as just that spark of curiosity or knowing that something's coming because you're here to listen. Thank you so much for being here and sending you and your family so much love and blessings.